In episode 39, titled 4.1 Choose Visual Types, Charts, Maps, Pivot Tables, and Infographics, the central skill is selecting a visual that makes a question easier to answer instead of merely making the page look busy. Visual choice is not decoration, because the wrong chart can hide the pattern that matters or create a pattern that is not real. When a stakeholder glances at a figure, they form a conclusion fast, so the first responsibility is to make the most defensible conclusion the easiest one to see. That means matching the visual, to the data type, and to the audience's attention limits, all while protecting accuracy. The theme throughout is clarity in service of decisions, because a clean visual can reduce argument and speed up responsible action. A visual works when it compresses complexity without changing meaning, which is why the choice of chart type is tightly connected to how people perceive differences. Some visuals are best at showing rank and magnitude, while others reveal trends, relationships, or geographic variation, and mixing these purposes often creates confusion. The test is whether the viewer can answer the intended question in a few seconds, because a visual that requires long explanation is often the wrong tool for the job. Good visuals also preserve context, such as units, time windows, and the population and scope, so the figure is not misread as broader or more precise than it truly is. When visuals are chosen well, they become a shared reference point that reduces back and forth about what the data really says. Bar charts are often the most reliable choice for comparing categories and rankings because they align with how humans judge length and magnitude. When the question is which product category leads sales, which region has the most support tickets, or which channel generates the highest conversion, bars show those comparisons directly. They also support ranking naturally, since the bars can be ordered to make the highest and lowest values obvious without forcing the viewer to decode positions. Bar charts handle uneven categories well, meaning one category can be much larger than another, and the difference remains readable. The key is that the category labels must be clear and stable, because category fragmentation from inconsistent text values can create the illusion of many small categories when the truth is fewer larger groups.
Line charts are the workhorse for showing trends over time because the connected shape makes change, direction, and pace visible in a way that tables rarely achieve. Time has order, and a line respects that order by connecting sequential points, so the viewer can see rises, dips, seasonality, and turning points quickly. A line chart becomes especially useful when the question is about movement rather than level, such as whether performance is improving, whether demand is accelerating, or whether an incident rate is stabilizing after a change. The practical discipline is ensuring the time window and time grain match the business rhythm, because daily noise can overwhelm a monthly story, and monthly smoothing can hide a daily spike that matters. When time is handled carefully, a line chart becomes a narrative of what happened and when it shifted.
Scatter plots are the visual of choice for relationships and clusters because they show two variables at once and reveal whether the data forms patterns, groupings, or exceptions. When the question is whether higher marketing spend aligns with higher conversions, whether response time relates to customer satisfaction, or whether transaction size relates to fraud risk, a scatter plot makes the relationship visible without forcing a single summary statistic. Clusters can reveal segments that behave differently, such as one group of customers with high value and low churn, and another with low value and high churn, even if the overall average looks stable. A scatter plot also highlights outliers that can distort averages, since extreme points appear as visible exceptions rather than hidden contributors. The caution is that a visible relationship is not proof of causation. So the plot should be framed as an observational view that suggests hypotheses rather than guarantees. Maps should be used only when geography truly drives the story, because maps are attractive but can be misleading when location is incidental. A map earns its place when decisions depend on region-specific differences, such as resource allocation, localized demand, regulatory exposure, weather-driven risk, or market performance tied to territory. When geography is not causal, a map can distract by implying that boundaries matter more than they do, especially when differences are actually driven by channel, customer type, or data coverage variation. Maps also demand careful normalization because large regions can appear dominant by area even when counts are small, and dense regions can look dramatic even when rates are ordinary. The discipline is to use a map when the viewer needs to think in place, not merely when the dataset includes a location field. Pivot tables are a powerful exploration tool because they let an analyst summarize, regroup, and drill into data quickly without committing to a single fixed view too early. They shine when the question is still being refined, such as identifying which segments drive a trend, which combinations of attributes explain a spike, or how totals change when filtered by time, region, and channel. A pivot table makes aggregation explicit, so it becomes easier to see whether measures reconcile and whether changes are driven by volume or by rate shifts across groups. They also support quick quality checks, because unexpected totals, missing categories, or sudden row count changes can be spotted early in the exploration cycle. The key is to treat pivot outputs as intermediate evidence rather than final storytelling, since pivot tables are best at discovery and confirmation, while charts are best at communication. Infographics can be useful when they add context quickly, but they should be used sparingly because decorative elements can overpower the data and reduce trust. An infographic may help when the audience needs a fast orientation, such as what a process flow looks like, what steps exist in a funnel, or what definitions apply to a metric, and the data itself is simple. The risk is that infographics can imply precision or completeness without providing the actual evidence, which encourages readers to remember the art more than the measurement. Infographics also tend to be harder to update consistently, so they can drift from current definitions and create quiet misalignment across reporting cycles. When used carefully, they support understanding, but the data must remain the main character, and the story must remain auditable. Chart choice should match data type and question, because the best visual is the one that matches the structure of the information being communicated. Categorical comparisons naturally fit bar charts because categories do not have inherent order beyond the order the analyst chooses to present. Time series fit line charts because time is ordered and continuity helps the viewer see progression and change. Relationships between two numeric variables fit scatterplots because they preserve individual observations and show patterns without forcing a single aggregate conclusion. Geographic variation fits maps only when location is the explanatory lens rather than a decorative coordinate. When the match is correct, the viewer's eye does the work of understanding without requiring heavy narration or defensive caveats. Misleading scales, bins, and truncated axes are among the most common ways visuals become untrustworthy, even when the underlying numbers are correct. A truncated axis can exaggerate small differences and make normal variation look like dramatic movement, which can push stakeholders toward overreaction. Poor bin choices can hide distribution structure, such as hiding multimodal patterns or making one segment appear more common simply because bins are unevenly defined. Inconsistent scales across comparable charts can make two regions look equally volatile even when one has much larger variation, which breaks the integrity of comparisons. The disciplined move is to keep scales honest and consistent, Define bins with context and ensure that the visual impression matches the numeric reality rather than manipulating attention through presentation tricks. A marketing performance scenario is a helpful practice case because it naturally involves categories, time, and relationships that tempt the analyst to use too many visuals at once. Consider a question about whether a campaign improved signups and whether the improvement came from a particular channel, region, or device type. A line chart can show the trend in signups over the campaign window to reveal timing, lift, and whether the effect persists or fades. A bar chart can compare channels or regions to show where performance concentrated and whether the ranking changed after the campaign began. A scatter plot can explore whether spend aligns with conversion across channels or ad groups, highlighting clusters and outliers that suggest where efficiency differs. This scenario reinforces that one question often benefits from a small set of complementary visuals, each chosen for a specific sub-question rather than for variety. Simplicity is a design constraint, not a style preference, and limiting categories and colors often makes a chart more truthful by reducing cognitive load. Too many categories create cramped labels and encourage the viewer to guess rather than read, which turns precision into noise. Too many color variations can imply meaning where none exists, especially if the audience assumes a color difference represents a segment or status that was not actually intended. A simpler chart also makes it easier to notice anomalies because the viewer is not distracted by visual clutter and can focus on the shape and the differences that matter. The professional goal is that the chart can be described aloud cleanly, since a chart that cannot be summarized clearly usually contains too much at once. When simplicity is prioritized, comprehension improves and misinterpretation drops. Context is what makes a visual defensible, because a chart without labels, units, and a defined time window invites the audience to supply assumptions that may be wrong. Units matter because revenue is different in dollars versus thousands of dollars, and time to resolve is different in minutes versus hours, and the chart must make that explicit. Time windows matter because a trend across a holiday season cannot be compared directly to a trend across a quiet period without stating what period is shown and why. Labels also include the population definition, such as whether the metric refers to active customers, all accounts, or a filtered subset, because population drift can create apparent change that is not behavioral. When context is present, the viewer can challenge or confirm meaning quickly, which strengthens trust and reduces debate over what the chart really means. A quick chart selection checklist can be kept as a narrated mental routine that starts with the question, then the data type, then the risk of misread. The first step is naming whether the question is about comparing categories, tracking time, exploring relationships, or understanding geography, because that choice points towards bars, lines, scatters, or maps. The next step is confirming the grain and the definition, so the chart reflects the correct unit of analysis and does not accidentally double count through aggregation mistakes. The next step is protecting honesty in scale and labeling, so the visual impression matches the numeric reality and the audience sees units, time windows, and population scope clearly. The final step is asking whether the chart can be described in 1 or 2 sentences without qualification, because if it cannot, the design likely needs simplification or segmentation. This routine keeps chart choice disciplined, fast, and defensible under exam conditions. The conclusion of episode 39 sets a practical assignment. Choose one data set you already know, then map one clear business question to one chart type and explain why that chart is the best fit. The data set can be marketing performance, support response time, subscription renewals, or any domain where categories, time, or relationships matter, because the skill transfers across contexts. The practice is to state the question, choose the visual that matches it, and then add the minimal context needed for trust, including units, time window, and population definition. A final pass should consider one risk, such as misleading scale or fragmented categories, and how the chosen design avoids that risk. Repeating this assignment builds the instinct the exam rewards, which is selecting a visual that clarifies decisions while protecting the integrity of the underlying data. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.